My guest is Rabbi Dov Marmer, Rabbi Emeritus from Holy Blossom Temple. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been on before, and now you live half the year in Jerusalem. You have a sense of the media and what it does for Israel and what it doesn't do. What's your sense of the importance of this show?
I can see two aspects of
Well,
it.
you can, if they're negative, it's all right.
I can see two aspects of it. The negatives we'll talk about later. But first of all, that it presents Israel and various aspects of Judaism as is, not in some adversarial situation, and not to debate and not to defend. So you see all kinds of aspects, which I think is very important for the non-Jewish community, to see Jews who are no different than others. For the Jewish community, it's also important because we see aspects of the community, particularly about Israel, that we don't come across, that tourists don't come across when we go and visit, and which do not appear in the debates here either. Movies, strange people. A friend of mine a few years ago was a wine connoisseur in Israel. You know, I wouldn't have thought of it in those terms. So this has been different and interesting and wholesome, and I hope successful.
And when you've been on the show, what response has there been when you appeared as a guest?
When you are on television, it doesn't matter what you say. People will come up to you and say, I saw you on television, which normally means, well, you must be somebody.
I see.
Yes.
Your instant
Yes.
15 seconds fame.
That's right, that's right. So this is how I have perceived it, not only on your show, but on anything else over the years that I have been. It's always been good. It doesn't matter however stupid I was in answering your questions.
You're never stupid. Last question. Do you think it's important that we have a membership base, a community base for the program?
I don't know about that. It's important that I think that there is a fan club around, yes? And if that's to cost a few dollars, of course. Namely, that there are a number of people, a critical mass, who feel that this is relevant and important to them, and perhaps they will in turn talk to others about it, because you're doing a good job, and I hope you'll continue.
I'll pay your bribe later.
Thank you.
Now that you're retired. Well, thank you very much, Dov, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And of course, I always appreciate our conversations, and we just had lunch. It was terrific.
Terrific.
Thanks again.
Splendid.
Stem cells develop into the varied cells in our body as they differentiate. What regulates differentiation? How does alcohol disrupt that process in the fetus during pregnancy? In Israel, individuals, not embryos, have rights, so stem cell research flourishes. Do human rights flourish as well? Why don't they in Saudi Arabia? Join us next week for Regulation and Rights.
Unknown Thought is made possible through the generosity of sponsors who care about people. IC Savings Bank, Ready Honda, and Corey's Clothiers. I'm so pleased you've joined me today for another episode of Unknown Thought, brought to you by IC Savings Bank, Ready Honda, and Corey's Clothiers. My guest today is Monica Parker. Monica, I think I'm going to ask the viewers to go online and look at you and see what they can learn about you, because you've got a very long resume. It's illustrious, it's fantastic, and I think for many people it's very personal. They've connected to you without even knowing it. I want to start off by talking about you today.
I like it.
Okay, your childhood ambition was to be a dress designer.
Yeah.
You become a dress designer.
Right.
Ivan Reitman wants to borrow one of your creations for his first film.
Right.
And you get a part.
Well, I threatened him.
Okay.
I said, if you want dresses for your, first of all, it was his university thesis, and it was his first movie, and a model girlfriend of mine brought him in and said, he's doing his first movie, he needs dresses, and I said, fine, but I want to have the lead. And he looked at me and he said, no, but you could be a prostitute. And I said, okay, does it pay? And he said, yeah, $125, and I said, okay, yeah, but you mean actress, don't you? And he said, yeah. And so I became an actress by sort of blackmail.
So I know Dan Aykroyd gets his first job on one of the films you work on, and you get to meet all kinds of amazing people. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the dress for a minute.
Yes.
Did you ever feel that you fit into the dresses you made?
No, not ever. Well, no, that's not really true. When I took Benzedrine for a year, Benny's, and laxatives provided by my mother, I fit into one of her dresses for about 15 minutes. And then it all came back.
I know there's a whole metaphor for life here we can talk about, and that's actually in part what we want to address. But I want to talk about this idea of weight, fashion, women, and primarily the loss of intimacy that weight seems to create.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So tell me, I know you're starring in a one-woman show. Tell me about it.
I like to call it my 1 woman and a half show. It's called Sex, Pies, and a Few White Lies. The only reason sex is in the title is because it makes people come and see it. It's not because there's any in it, really. It's really my journey, my struggle, my lifelong struggle with acceptance. It's really, ultimately this is a play about acceptance, and that my belief is that you have to be happy with who you are while you are who you are, and if it changes, then you have to be happy with the adjustment. But in the meantime, I've spent years being unhappy being fat, and that's not true anymore. I've made peace ages ago. This is who I was intended to be.
Now, I've met a lot of thin women and a lot of large women, and the fat does not apply based on weight.
No.
Fat is a state of mind.
I agree.
How do you teach, particularly young women, to think of themselves as something other than fat if it's a body image issue? What word can you replace it with? How do you change
Grace.
the mindset? Okay, and how's it received?
I feel that this culture insists, for young women especially, well, it's for literally, it's men, women, children, everybody, that you have to be thin to be happy. And I think that's really unfair, because no one can change being short, no one can change being tall. Yeah, you could change having a big nose, I think, but you cannot change your height. And so I think short people and tall people make peace because those are their options, and they create their personas based on it. So I think genetics plus cheese and chocolate created me. I have an appetite, and I don't have an eating disorder. I don't have a Hannibal Lecter appetite. I like pleasure. I like food. I like conversation. I like an exchange of ideas. I know lots of people who eat, we all do, who eat more than I do or you do or whatever, and they're thin.
Right.
Food sticks to me. It lands, it stays. So what I do is live a healthy lifestyle. I walk, and I tell people who are, culturally, let's say you're from Samoa, let's say you're from some country where people are predisposed to be large. My mother was Austro-Hungarian. She wasn't by any means, I don't think she was fat, but she was built. And my people are of bodies. And I think if you looked at black and white photographs in another time, no one judged anyone. Zadie's, boobies, children, people, those black and white tintypes were beautiful looking people. We didn't say, oh, she was fat. Nobody said that. It's only this generation, probably since the 60s, since the culture of supermodels began, and since we became narcissistic, self-obsessed creatures, slaves to corporations who are thinking about our eyelashes somewhere right now and deciding that they're not long enough. And so they're going to make a mascara that will make them longer. So we go, oh, yeah, I got to go get that mascara. I've got to get that diet product. I've got to be something I wasn't intended to be.
When will there be that cultural shift when people can no longer take the pain of permanent invalidation because of their size or shape, and there will be an internalized revolt that says, I don't care? Because right now, it exists in you. You project, I don't care. You project, actually, I like exactly who I am. I've learned to like it. When will that be internalized so that mothers and fathers and parents and grandparents and siblings will not compete? Or is it just human nature? But you sort of saying that it had a start, or it had a sort of a renaissance. There was a time, obviously, when voluptuous women were in vogue. Is it a vogue thing?
Yeah.
Is it something that can change? Should we expect the coming of the self-acceptance Messiah? Are we waiting for the day when we all wake up and go, hey, I'm fine?
Well, I'm not a futurist, but needless to say, I always have an opinion. I think when more people speak out, and I think there are more people speaking out, I think Dove Beauty Campaign,
right.
Women as women the way they are, I think the more women who sort of, and it comes from women more than it comes from men, but the more women that take back their self-identity in a positive way, and I think it's the more grown-up women who do that, and maybe young girls, and it is Vogue, it's definitely Vogue. So if the Vogue changes, but it has to change from a movement, and it has to change because I would say, like, women who let their hair grow gray, which will never be me, by the way, but those women who are happy to be gray have created a movement. Because I have a Hungarian mother, it's in the code of ethics. I'm not allowed to go gray, It's just not happening. But if that means something to you and you want that, you should do that. I think women who feel healthy, athletic, who it's the slippery slope to the other side that says you're not good enough no matter what you look like. I know, and you know, and everyone who's watching knows these beautiful young girls who don't see beauty. They see failure. They see self-loathing. That's coming from that corporate brainwashing that we get every day in every magazine, every TV ad. When that changes, and how does that change? By putting more people, like me, into positions of power to speak out. Movie stars have to speak out. There has to be, they can't all worship the thin God. They have to go and broaden the spectrum. They do.
I think I understand you're suggesting that it's not just words, it's also actions. We
Totally.
have to see everyday, regular, attractive people.
And embrace that.
And embrace that. And not only embrace it, but embrace it by the unspoken. The unspoken mean if you can turn on your news at night and someone is gray-haired or larger or perhaps doesn't fit into that narrow stereotype, we are in a position where the unspoken is perhaps, as a visual society, we need to see the behavior. So perhaps what we're really waiting for is not the words, but the actions that will indicate that the leading model figure in a movie can be somebody who is not perfect,
Right.
2, 0, etc. I just want to conclude this little conversation by talking about the intimacy. If we are constantly worried about intimacy, we will never find ourselves happy because we can't connect to another human being. So I'm really pleased that you came here to talk about this. This is a very personal thing, Monica, and I'm really glad you're here for this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please join us next time for another wonderful episode of Unknown Thought.